You're listening to 91 Reasons, a journey into the twisted landscape of pop culture. Keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times. And now, the voice, Jeff Tucker.
Part of the show and the reason that it exists, like I said, was way in the beginning. I was like, I'm going to have an oral history of the person that I am, the interests that I have, the stories, the family stories passed down, that sort of thing, so that my kids would have hours and hours of their dad talking to them, which is a rare thing. I mean, right now when somebody goes, unless you're a celebrity or somebody who has this weird hobby like I do, when someone passes away, you tend to think, wow, do I have, videos of them and I can watch, and maybe you get a few minutes, a few stolen this. God bless, I have a friend who, her daughter passed away and all she had were answering machine messages. Really great, amazing, just run-of-the-mill, what are you doing? Answering machine messages. And before she passed away, they're trivial. And after she passed away, they're irreplaceable. They're gold. They're better than gold. So my kids will have all this hours and hours. They'll have so many hours of me talking that they could string them together and have me tell new stories, like they did. Remember Roger Ebert at the end, the poor guy? He had to have his whole mouth closed due to cancer. So they originally got him one of those speech translators. And eventually somebody worked it out so it was his voice. They took all of his reviews and digitized it and broke it into statements and phrases, and he was able to talk using his own voice, right? So my kids will be able to do that with me from beyond the grave, But here's the other thing I've said on the show. I'm not in a hurry to go. No one is. Some of us, some do. But I'm not in a hurry to go. I've talked in the show about what it's like getting older and the things they don't tell you. Like one day your eyes just go. I wear contact lenses. I can see a bird opening a seed across the street. If I had a wristwatch, I could not read the wristwatch without putting it at arm's length to look at it. And it didn't used to be that way. If I take my lenses out, it's the exact opposite. I can't see across the street, but I can read a book, no problem. So I'm supposed to have bifocals. The optometrist told me I needed bifocals. And he gave me that look. I said it before. You're getting old, Mr. Tucker. No one wants to hear that. No one wants to hear you're getting old. We can't stop it. We can't stop getting old. And yet, what do? Except you face it, It is one of those things, though. Like, it truly is. Like, they say, writers have said it since the dawn of the printed page or stories. I woke up one day and I was old. And I feel like that. Like, I've woken up and all of my teenage and growing up years were just a dream, a flashback of somebody else. I know that they're mine. I know that they're my memories, and I'm very protective of them. And yet, your life moves in stages, I did an episode once where I talked about how I view time, and I see the passage of time in a different way than most people. And I think that's how I'm able to access all these long forgotten memories, But in the interest of staying alive, I did talk about going to see the doctor, and I don't remember how in depth I talked about it, but I went in just like, I'm going to have a physical. I pay a lot of money for insurance. I should go get myself checked out. And first thing he told me was that my blood pressure was a little high, not sky high, but a little high. And I just looked at him. I said, well, I don't want to be here. And he said, it's a common thing. People's blood pressure spikes simply going to the doctor, right? And I had been there a few days earlier giving blood. I think I've told this story before, and if I have, I apologize. But it connects to the thread here. He said my white blood cell level was high. So he needed more blood. So I went down and I gave more blood. Then they called on the phone and they wanted more blood. And the doctor requested other tests. He wanted to do a full MRI. He wanted to do one where you drink a solution. He wants to do, he scheduled a colonoscopy, for God's sake. Now, colonoscopies are supposed to be 50 and up. And it's one of those things it's eventually down the road. It's your gift. It's your reward for obtaining a certain age, right? So I thought, well, I've got 5 more years. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants to be invaded, but he requested it. So I'm on the phone listening to this litany of tests they want to do. And at the end, she starts talking to me about what the copays are going to be. Now, I didn't think, God, I'm so naive, right? You're listening to a guy. I was going to say you're talking to a guy, but some of you talk back to the radio. It's fine. How's it going? So, I don't use my insurance that much, right? And, my wife uses it. When I went in for the physical, they didn't even ask me for money, and I thought, it must be included. Then they sent me a bill. Not a hefty one, but more than I was expecting. And so she starts rattling off what the copays are going to be. Now, wait. I pay a lot of money for my insurance. And the doctor, it's not like listen, I didn't walk in and go, look, I want you to do these tests on me. Can somebody please do these tests on me? Then they'd go, oh yeah, it costs X amount of dollars. And instead, the doctor just he has no concept of what these things actually cost people and just rattles them off. And the nurse is like, well, we need to do all these tests. I said, well, I can't. What do you mean? Well, I don't have that kind of money. Well, you have to have these tests. The doctor wants them. Well, that's great. Is the doctor going to help me have a bake sale? Dr. Wolf? Is Dr. Wolf going to help me have a bake sale? So I made all these appointments knowing I wasn't going to keep them. And so it's one of those things where you see it all the time. You can prepare for rainy days and you can say that you're ready, and then it rains and the roof leaks. And what I said on Facebook is sometimes it rains and sometimes it doesn't. And what we do in the middle is what defines us as people, right? So I swallowed my pride and I put up a GoFundMe and I was very honest. This is what's happening to me. They want all these tests and I don't have the money. And, this is not a scare tactic, but boy, you start Googling higher white blood cell count and you will pull the covers up over your head, because all it mentions is cancer this and cancer that. Now, I'm not saying I have cancer because I haven't taken the tests yet, and I'm pretty sure that's not what it is. I am reasonably confident it's something very benign. But it's one of those things where you don't know. I simply don't know. So, listen. You ever watch somebody die of cancer? Literally watch them waste away. It breaks every emotion you have till you are a broken person because you can't help them. And I've watched 2 of my coworkers succumb to cancer. And these are folks that had to leave work to get treatment, and they would come back and you would just see the ravages of this disease. And it's quite possibly the most terrifying thing you've ever seen because of how helpless you feel. And you go, is there something I can do? Can I give something of my body to help you live? And there's nothing you can do. One of them was my shift lead who worked for me. Great guy. He smoked a lot. He knew it was going to happen one day, and it happened. And he would come in, and he's just wasting away. Like, he was so thin and so frail, and it was so hard to watch. And I can't imagine the courage that it took for him to face himself and mortality. We're all going to have to face it. Some of us are going to face it in an instant. It's going to happen in an instant. It's going to be all over. It's going to be a long instant. And some of us have to look in the mirror over an extended period of time. And, you know, it sucks, man. What other way is there to say it other than dying sucks, and watching people that you work with and respect, watching them die is terrifying. You feel bad for them. You feel bad for yourself. You feel bad for mortality. My mom died 20 years ago this Christmas, and it still hurts. You never get over people, especially if they go young. And I'm not saying it's any easier with older people, but at least you can say, look, I had a long time to hang out with these cats, and I can treasure all those memories. People who go young, you're like, I barely scratched the surface of who you were. And so with all of those emotions, I put up a GoFundMe because I want to know what the hell is wrong with that spike. So I can come on this show months from now and go, look, I had all the tests came in and it was X and it was fine and it's all over with. And thank God I can count those blessings in my favor. So I had a GoFundMe, whether it's running or not by the time this show airs, I have no idea. But some amazing people gave of themselves. And I was very clear on the GoFundMe that it's not a handout. You want a signed book? You got it. You want to be on the show? You got it. You want a time box? You got it. You want to be in the book? You got it. You tell me what you want. I'm an artist. It completes me to share my art with you. And that goes for any kind of art. I've said that before. Dance, music, writing, poetry, acting, painting, sculpting. Artists love to give back. That's what we do. That's why we were given these notions to want to do these things. So, Jeff DePauli, Dean Corin, Amy Mozzie, Doug Barnes, Greg Condon, Michael Bondi, Adrian Bose, Monique Stefani, Anonymous, Jillian and Sean McDowell, Anonymous, who said, I'm on the East Coast, so take a time box and give it to a kid, and I will do that. Here's Dan Baranowski, Rob Perez, Matt and Christina Gorka. Another Anonymous. Albert, good friend of the show, Albert. Joe Houston, Colleen Tolley, Anonymous, Luke Brodowski, Caesar DeHaro, Anonymous, Russ Orso, Jeremy Lormond, Scott DeVonzo from Mystic Motel. That's the ride-through home attraction for Halloween. Robin Rogers, Kevin Horton, Chloe Avila, Anonymous, another Anonymous, Rebecca Salcido, AJ Larson, and more Anonymous. And what do you say to people who, you open yourself up like that other than thank you so much. My family thanks you. I thank you personally. I'm gonna, when it all the dust clears, I will start sending out all of the books and stuff that I promised, because that's what I do. And eventually we'll be able to come on this show and talk about the results of whatever that battery of tests comes up with, Maybe they will discover finally that I'm an alien, or that I have a brain cloud, like in Joe versus the Volcano, or it's Phenomenon. I've learned a bunch of movie stuff overnight, right? Or I'm actually Rain Man. A friend of mine listened to the Rain Man episode, and we're like, we didn't want to say anything, but you are Rain Man. You can say it now because you admit it in the show. Like, yeah, I'm definitely Rain Man. Definitely working at Blockbuster Video. So, so thank you to everyone for your amazing contributions on GoFundMe. I am humbled to the very core, and I am, almost speechless, which is impossible for me, but you know how it goes. So again, thank you so much to everybody who's helped out. It's almost like I can't even accept it. Somebody mailed me a check, said, I don't want to do it through GoFundMe because they take a cut, and I want you to give up. I was like, I can't take this money. I can't do this. But it's one of those things where this show and the person that I am, I've opened up, and we all have a stake in this, right? What have I said over and over again on the show? We're all in this together, and what goes around eventually comes back around, and the good that you give comes back to you. Bugsy Malone, you give a little love, and it all comes back to you, right? So, thank you, and I'm gonna get to this show's basically just the GoFundMe thank you, but I was like, that's not enough for a show, so I'm gonna do something that I haven't done, that I have thought about for quite a while. So we will get right on that right now. So I went to a lot of sci-fi and horror conventions in the 80s. It seemed like after 85 or 86, Creation Con really ramped it up, and there was almost a convention every weekend, maybe every other weekend, between Fangoria's Weekend of Horrors and Creation Con's Star Trek this and Star Wars that, and the one at the Shrine was up, every other month or so. So my friends and I, we loved to go to conventions because before the internet, if you wanted to hang out with people that had the same interests as you, you actually had to go somewhere. There were no chat rooms. There were no bulletin boards. There was the convention, and there were things to do. And, I went to so many conventions, and it's one of those things where I wish I'd kept everything that I had gotten purchased and all the freebies, and life just happens, and things slip through your fingers, right? I do have the claw necklace that I bought at the Equicon 1986, must have been 86, that I treasured it. I still have it. It's the one that I fought Rick Williams over in high school. But the other thing that you used to get at conventions was comic books, magazines. I liked buying magazines. I was always a Starlog, Fangoria, Mad, Cracked, Cinefantastique, Cinefex. If I'd kept them all over the years, my house would look like a shut-in hoarder. But at one time I had every issue of Maxim, like, stacked to the moon. And eventually it's like the internet is like, look, you can get all of these articles and photos on the internet. And that might have been the first time I transferred, not transfer, but in my head did the dance of, I'm going to get rid of these physical items because they're available online. I can't do that with movies yet. I'm still a movie guy. I will always be a movie guy. I grew up in the age of collecting movies, so the idea of not physically having the movies, I don't know if I can handle that. So, but magazines, there were all these great movie magazines to get, and a staple of the convention circuit. See, I don't know where this magazine you would purchase it for real, not at a convention. I never went to a newsstand and got Prevue magazine. It's a Prevue, Prevue magazine. And Prevue magazine is like how do you even describe it? It's exploitation, but it's exploitation of the movies. So I found a lot of them because I had a couple left over from my convention days, but I actually stumbled across a significant amount, like 3, 4, 8, like 10 or 12. Some were doubles, and they were like $9 shipped. I was like, oh, I have to have those. And I bought them to remember these magazines when I was a kid. Because here's the thing. Prevue magazine would always usually put a really pretty girl on the cover. I've got one here with Tanya Roberts as Sheena. And then there's Sybil Danning, if you remember Sybil Danning. Here's the cast of The Witches of Eastwick. Here is some woman, I don't even know who she is. It might be Linnea Quigley, but they don't name her on the cover. I bet it's Linnea Quigley. And then here's Tom Cruise and Elizabeth Shue. It looks like Cocktail. Here's Goldie Hawn, Mel Gibson in Bird on a Wire. Oh, here's finally 1990 September. Here's Tom Selleck from Quigley Down Under, followed by the July episode of Arnold Schwarzenegger in Total Recall. There were two reasons to buy these magazines. The first one was I didn't collect pornography. I know a lot of guys had big stacks of Playboys and stuff. I never had any of that. My mother would have flipped out if she'd found a stash of those, so I didn't have any of that. So this was the next best thing, because this is, ostensibly a movie magazine, but they have ads on almost every other page for pin-up books that you can buy. The first one is all action. You have to go a few pages in before it turns, and it's here's a whole book of Betty Page pictures. Here's a listing of, here's the Sports Illustrated swimsuit calendar. This is from December 1984. This is pretty old. Yeah, 84. There's Lolita, various swimwear and lingerie. Nothing X-rated, all really PG-13. And you know what? The pictures are just a little bigger than a postage stamp, and they're in black and white. So this is the equivalent. This is the Playboy equivalent of watching a dirty movie when you don't have the channel purchased for, and it's all wavy. How many guys did that? Watching. Oh, I think I saw something. I don't. They're having dinner. I don't know. We have to wait. Hold on. There's something that's a leg, and this is what guys do. So, but the reason I got these magazines was not for that. I mean, you can get pinup stuff on the internet in half a second. But in order to sell lots of pinup magazines, this guy actually had to, who's the editor? It doesn't really say who the editor is. Brendan Strasser? I don't know. But in order to have a magazine, there has to be some content, right? Steranko is the thing. Publisher, designer, editor. It just says Steranko. I don't know who Steranko is. I'm probably missing something by not knowing who that is. But they had to actually have a magazine, so they had a letter section, an editorial section, and then the reason you bought it was coming attractions. And these coming attractions are the greatest, because here's Hedda Hopper or one of those rumor magazines, rumor reporters reporting on stuff that they know to be in production and stuff that they've heard might be going into production. And reading these things, because I devoured these things when I got them in the mail, reading these things is like a window into what could have been, because they mention so many projects that are just like, wait, that was a thing? And I don't know if he's making these up. I don't know if it's just filler or if it's a rumor, but some of it eventually will come to pass, So there's glossy articles in here. Here's one about Buckaroo Banzai. Here's one about Conan the Destroyer. And here's Roger Moore talking about being 007, Tanya Roberts, from Sheena. Here's an article on Rod Steiger, Jamie Lee Curtis in Grandview, US. Anybody even remember Grandview, USA but me? Oh my God! Here's a great article on Dune. So it did have some meat to it, you know. And for us movie kids, there was no bad movie magazine. You know, we got them all. And then finally, it was all condensed into a corporate package in Premiere magazine from the mid to late 80s to the early. Remember Premiere magazine, man? Like that was the magazine. Premiere magazine was like the Time magazine of movie magazines. If you made the cover of that, you made it, right? So here we go. I'm gonna read some of these. This is coming attractions as of 1984. So it says Tom Selleck has just wrapped his latest feature film, Runaway. Remember Runaway? That's the Michael Crichton movie with Gene Simmons as the bad guy. Remember Runaway? Kirstie Alley's in it too. Other Selleck films in production include Second Wind with Mary Steenburgen. Never heard of it. Early Autumn from the novel by Robert B. Parker with a private eye. No idea. Chevy Chase has been inked for the lead in Fletch. So that would come out, 85, 86 for Fletch? They talk about what Fletch is. Aiming for a summer 85 release. While Jack Nicholson is considering to reprise his role as Detective J.J. Gittes from Chinatown. Now, see, this is 84. He wouldn't make Two Jakes until 6 years later. So he's talking about a project that was stalled and turned around for over half a decade. Like, that's amazing. America's favorite Hill Street cop, Daniel J. Travante, has momentarily turned in his police badge to co-star with Sophia Loren in Aurora. No idea. But they were talking about Two Jakes there for a second. Ray Milland in The Mass of Death, Sherlock Holmes, never heard of it. Louis Teague is set to direct Drew Barrymore in Cat's Eye. Remember Cat's Eye? I actually enjoyed Cat's Eye. I was just talking about that with a friend of mine. It says they're in North Carolina studios for some very nasty doings. Other King stories serve as the basis for Creepshow 2, which George Romero is prepping. Now, that made it to theaters. The Sisterhood, never heard of it. Day of the Dead, right? It doesn't scare you. The Howling 2, I remember The Howling 2, right? Sybil Danning as a 10,000-year-old blonde werewolf. What else we got here? I'm skimming through just some of the fluff here. Here's the sequels that are coming. Porky's Revenge, Meatballs 3. They're talking about Annie 2. Annie 2 never happened. You know, Annie 2 never happened not because Annie bombed, but because it simply just did not make enough money considering the extraordinarily high budget on Annie, which leads you to believe it was a bomb, but it really wasn't. Annie made a ton of dough, and why they never really just jumped right back into production with Annie 2, I have no idea. How about Flash Gordon and the Cosmic Cheerleaders? That never happened. Sylvester Stallone will be slipping into his old battle jacket for Rambo First Blood Part 2, right? Here we go. A pair of aces have collaborated on a film adaptation of Colin Wilson's The Space Vampires. This is actually Tobe Hooper. This is Life Force. Does anybody remember Life Force? Well, Life Force is about space vampires coming to Earth. It has the lead woman in it is like nude for almost the entire movie. Like she just walks around naked. Like Life Force, man. Dan O'Bannon completed first directorial assignment, Return of the Living Dead. You ever seen Return of the Living Dead? That's a great flick. Again, remember, this is 1984. Dan O'Bannon is set to roll for Dino De Laurentiis' Total Recall, directed by David Cronenberg. How about that? Of course, Total Recall would come out in 1990, directed by Paul Verhoeven. So that's amazing, right? But I think this version of Total Recall was closer to the original story because in the film, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's a big, buff, over-the-top, muscular dude. And I think the original version of Total Recall, he was supposed to be just an average guy. Kind of like Colin Farrell in the remake nobody saw except the people yelling at the radio right now. They're talking about, they just finished production of Into the Night. Did you ever see Into the Night? That's a great movie. Jeff Goldblum and Michelle Pfeiffer. It's a lot like Scorsese's After Hours, but I do like that movie. Here we go. No, Lust in the Dust. I think Lust in the Dust actually got made. Cinema cult queen Edie Williams has crossed over to the X Zone to play Lady Lust. Directed by Russ Meyer, last seen in the nude lesbian Chained Heat with Sybil, Stella Stevens, and Linda Blair. Holy moly. See, they always throw that stuff in there, right? Here's Tom Berenger has definitely been signed for the coveted role of Rex O'Hurlihan in Rustler's Rhapsody. Remember Rustler's Rhapsody? The singing cowboy movie? God, so many movies that got made that nobody even remembers, although there are people that have these on their shelves because that's their favorite movie. But if you went into a Target and tried to explain that you wanted to find Rustler's Rhapsody, they might throw you out. Other films currently in production include Miracles with Terry Garr and Paul Rodriguez, The Man with One Red Shoe with Tom Hanks, that actually came out. Wise Guys with Joe Piscopo and Danny DeVito, I've seen that. Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield. I'll Meet You in Heaven with Glenn Close and Mandy Patinkin. I don't know that movie. Woody Allen's The Purple Rose of Cairo. C. Thomas Howell and Secret Admirer. Funny, rattled off all those movies. All those came out. Boom, boom, boom. Not 1 year later. That's amazing. Here we go. The Slugger's Wife. If anybody remembers that, that's a Neil Simon movie starring Rebecca De Mornay. Let's see what we got here. Brewster's Millions. The remake starring John Candy and Richard Pryor. Everybody remembers that one, right? Here we go. Blake Edwards titled Music Box with Burt Reynolds in a Laurel and Hardy type predicament. Okay, you know what? Here, listen to this. The comedian was also scheduled to team with Burt Reynolds in a Laurel and Hardy type predicament for director Blake Edwards titled Music Box. That movie actually came out. They're talking about Ted Danson and Howie Mandel in Blake Edwards' A Fine Mess. And it was supposed to star Burt Reynolds and Richard Pryor. See, I had no idea. That's hilarious. That is hilarious. Peter Falk, Alan Arkin in Big Trouble. That movie came out. I know that movie came out because when I worked at the video store, people would bring that up thinking it was Big Trouble in Little China, and I had to explain this is the wrong movie. How funny is that, right? The Secret Diary of Sigmund Freud, starring Bud Cort. I have no idea if that movie came out. The Gods Must Be Crazy. Remember that movie about the Coke bottle that falls into Africa? That's a great movie. It was even a sequel. It's official. This is the kind of stuff that's cool in these magazines. It's official. 21-year-old Danish beauty Brigitte Nielsen will play the title role in Red Sonja. I saw Red Sonja in the theater, man. And here it is, she was only 21 when she made that. Oh my gosh. Grace Jones is filming A View to a Kill, James Bond. We all know that one came out. This time Christopher Walken joins the ranks of 007 villains, while Roger Moore returns to share sexcapades and secrets with Tanya Roberts. View to a Kill was the film that convinced Roger Moore that his time as Bond was over, because I think he met Tanya Roberts' mom, and he was older than her. And here he is with her daughter as his love interest, and that's ridiculous. Gene Hackman, Anne Margaret, and Ellen Burstyn in Twice in a Lifetime. I think that came out. Rutger Hauer, Jennifer Jason Leigh in Flesh and Blood. Man, somebody brought Flesh and Blood to a party one time that we were all hanging out, and we put this on, and what a cool movie. Isn't that the chick from Fast Times at Ridgemont High? Yeah, Flesh and Blood, man. Everybody loved Rutger Hauer. What do we got here? Young Blood with Patrick Swayze and Rob Lowe. Goldie Hawn and Chris Sarandon in Protocol. Harrison Ford filming Witness. Eddie Murphy, Beverly Hills Cop. Wow, all these great movies. Terry Garr and Tom Berenger in Firstborn. I think Firstborn actually starred Peter Weller when it finally came out. Anthony Perkins and Kathleen Turner in Crimes of Passion. You ever seen Crimes of Passion? Man, that's a bizarre movie. Totally bizarre. Had two different boxes. One was tame and the other was really dirty. I remember because I had to take the dirty one off the shelf. Because the Blockbuster like, oh, we can't have this out here. Wow, how funny is that? Something called Cradle. I don't know what that is. Something about Orson Welles. The Cradle Will Rock. They're talking about Cradle Will Rock. Didn't that come out like in the 90s, the late 90s? With Tim Robbins? Wow. Talking about Martin Scorsese. This is, again, remember folks, 1984, talking about Martin Scorsese's The Last Temptation of Christ, which wouldn't come out for 3 more years. Wow, that's amazing. Girls Just Want to Have Fun, Plenty, Desperately Seeking Susan, A Certain Fury. I think we're on the last page here. Like, it just goes on and on and on, right? White Nights is being produced right now. This is about the Mikhail Baryshnikov is the dancer who defects, right? Let's see here. Talking about people who died. Talking about Explorers. Oh, Explorers coming out. Wow. Summer 85 Explorers. You ever seen Explorers? Explorers was one of those movies that, oh, how many times have you gone to a movie or seen a movie and like, God, 90% of this movie is amazing, and then they flubbed the ending. The ending is ridiculous to Explorers. Even though the creatures are by Rob Bottin, who did Darkness and RoboCop, the movie falls apart. Joe Dante took a lot of heat, but you know what? It wasn't his fault. The studio moved the release date up by months, and it wasn't ready, and they just took it from him. But man, Explorers is ripe for a remake and fixing that third act. It truly is. There's a couple of things about Steven Spielberg here that are great. Talking about his next project, The Goonies, about 2 young brothers, their friends, and a museum map, which spurs them on a modern-day treasure hunt. Along the way, they encounter a trove of dangers and surprises, from a long-lost pirate ship to a giant squid and a cave full of crabs. I've seen the squid scene, but I've never seen the crab scene. Spielberg's production slate also includes next summer's start for his version of Peter Pan, with an Easter 1986 release. This, folks, is 1984. Hook wouldn't come out for, 7 years from now. Wow. Young Sherlock Holmes, directed by Barry Levinson. And the most significant news is that the wonderkind filmmaker Steven Spielberg is currently blueprinting the first of the 9 Star Wars epic, the picture which intros Obi-Wan Kenobi, Darth Vader, Luke's mother, and a host of other characters scheduled to appear throughout the Journal of the Whills Super Saga. Spielberg originally discussed the project with Prevue 2 years ago, which would have been 1982. So think about this. Before the release of Return of the Jedi, Spielberg went on the record talking about directing 9 Star Wars movies that were the prequels. Holy moly! If the Journal of the Whills was the original subtitle to Star Wars, so it's just like all these gems that are hidden in this old magazine. I've only gotten to the first magazine. I thought I was going to get through, like, the whole stack. But I don't think that's going to happen. And if I'm boring you to tears, I apologize. But I think this stuff is fascinating. What could have been, woulda, coulda, shoulda, maybe. Enemy Mine may not mean anything to science fiction audiences at the moment, but in the months to come, it will have them on the edge of their seats. Now, you ever seen Enemy Mine? Dennis Quaid, Louis Gossett Jr., about 2 human and the Drax that are fighting this galactic war. They crash and they have to get along. Enemy Mine is, again, another movie ripe for a remake. Great movie. Sci-fi movie with not a lot of special effects, just really good makeup, and most importantly, really good writing. Oh, what a great movie that is. Wolfgang Peterson directing. Here we go. Battlefield Earth. Scientologist L. Ron Hubbard's sprawling intergalactic novel is another blockbuster currently slated for production. 2 films will be adapted from the book, each tagged at $20 million and using the same sets, much in the same manner as the first 2 Superman movies were shot. Helmer will be Ken Anakin of the pirate movie, working with writer Abraham Polanski, who wrote Avalanche Express. The epic takes place in the year 3000 and details of the efforts of a handful of surviving Earthlings who fight to overthrow an alien force. Richard Edlund, Boss Films, has come aboard as special effects advisor. Like, Battlefield Earth, I think, finally came out in 97. Like, that's unbelievable. 13 years of production. Production development hell. Holy moly. Another big name in sci-fi films, George Lucas, producing a dramatic TV production based on his furry creations, the Ewok movie, to be directed by John Cordy, scheduled to air this fall. That did, and it was mediocre. Studio executives are so enthralled by the box office returns for Star Trek III: The Search for Spock, they're talking to Leonard Nimoy about the possibility of directing Star Trek IV, which would naturally bring the director back in the role of Mr. Spock. Nimoy says, when we were set out to make Star Trek III, the original goal was to do about 25% less business than Part 2. Now we're hoping to equal Part 2's performance. He would go on to direct Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. Here we go. Biohazard, written and produced by Matthew Robbins and Hal Barwood, who made Dragon Slayer. Sam Watterson, Kathleen Quinlan, and Yaphet Kotto. Oh, they're talking about something else. That's so funny. So they jumped. They talked about something called Biohazard, which I've never heard of. But then they jumped into the upcoming 2010. Do you remember? People don't even know there was a sequel to 2001 because it bombed big time. Legend by Ridley Scott recounts the timeless struggle between the powers of darkness and light. Tom Cruise and Tim Curry star. John Carpenter films are usually events to the science fiction and fantasy audience, and Starman should be no exception. If anybody knows John Carpenter's filmography, some amazing films. Starman is way near the top, if not at the top. What a great film. Jeff Bridges and Karen Allen. So, there we go. That's the 1984 movie preview. Like, unbelievable that, like, if you had picked this up in 84, like, you got more information out of that than you would have gotten from a website. Like, 'cause websites are wrong. They're notorious for being wrong. Ain't It Cool News? Unless it's in production, nobody knows about it. And getting like, who's signed for what? Who's working on the script? So much more interesting than that it's just being lens, because lens means we're going to see it eventually. So I've also got April 1986 here. So we're moving a little farther ahead. Prevue Magazine, April 1986. Coming attractions include Highlander. Remember Highlander? Highlander came out. It was a big hit. I mean, it had a sequel even. The sequel's one of the worst films ever made. It says that the soundtrack for Highlander will be done by Queen. Did that happen? I don't know. I don't think that happened because I've never heard that. But I don't know Highlander that well. Battlefield Earth is being prepped for cinematic production by Oscar-winning writer Abraham Polanski. They're just repeating last month's, 2 years ago information. We've jumped 2 years, folks, and they're still talking about Battlefield Earth. Thriftier Rocketeers take to the stars in Space Camp. Kate Capshaw and Leah Thompson. Budgeted $14 million. John Badham's Short Circuit with Ali Sheedy about a relationship with her thinking computer. I mean, we all know Short Circuit with Johnny Five. Toby Hooper lands his remake of Invaders from Mars. That came out. Robotech feature. Did a Robotech feature ever hit theaters? I don't know. Rambo's being turned into a cartoon to go alongside Mr. T and Alvin and the Chipmunks. They're still talking about Legend, finally. Legend finally coming out. I mean, Legend was stuck in production hell for a while. Cherry 2000 follows the female tracker of the future, Melanie Griffith. This is 86. I think Cherry 2000, starring Melanie Griffith, did get made, but I don't think I don't think it came out until like 88. Like, I think it was just stuck and they could not get a distributor. The Man of Steel will fly again. Superman 4, slated for summer 1987. Until then, the world will be in other superhero hands. Spider-Man is primed for an early 1986 start with Joe Zito, director of Missing in Action, helming the Friendly Neighborhoods Wall Crawlers big screen debut. Isn't that great? Spider-Man in 1986. This was Canon. Canon had Canon's a little tiny film studio. And at one time, they owned Spider-Man, Superman, and Captain America, if I'm thinking right. Like, as of now, those are like platinum licenses. You know, beyond platinum. Those are tentpole to the tentpole nth degree. And the idea that at one time, before digital effects made this kind of stuff possible, they were in the hands of just little tiny podunk studios who managed to cut a deal with a comic book company. Like, isn't that amazing? Like, well, look at how far we've come as far as comic book movies. Wow. They're talking about Michael Winner, who directed Death Wish, directing Captain America. Martin Scorsese will supervise the big screen return of Dick Tracy. Wow. The oft-postponed project began 7 years ago with Burt Reynolds, Clint Eastwood, and Dustin Hoffman in the lineup for the lead. Warren Beatty, however, has pinned on the Crime Fighters badge for what is being bulletined as a straight thriller version of the four-color series, which probably means no TV wrist radio. Now, Dick Tracy would come out 4 years later, directed by and starring Warren Beatty himself. And, you know, one of those movies that I rediscovered, hated when it came out in theaters because it wasn't Batman. Watched it again and was like, wow, I am so wrong. This is a masterpiece. The color palette, songs by Sondheim, the direction, amazing. The Boy Who Could Fly will land in theaters under the guidance of Nick Castle, who directed The Last Starfighter. Labyrinth is currently being completed by George Lucas, Jim Henson, and David Bowie. Written by Terry Jones with fantasy designs by Brian Froud. Lucas is also executive producing the live-action adventures of comic book waddler Howard the Duck, with techno pop star Thomas Dolby composing the film score. So this is April 86. Howard the Duck was already in the can by this time. Troll, starring Shelley Hack. That's Empire Pictures. Stephen King shrieks again with 2 films from Night Shift. A big screen version of the short story The Body from different seasons. Rob Reiner will direct. Like, if you have to ask what that movie is, you're not a film buff. That's a little tiny blurb talking about Stand By Me, and Stand By Me has withstood the test of time to become a classic. Tennessee Williams meets Stephen King is director Wes Craven's description of his thriller Flowers in the Attic. He didn't direct Flowers in the Attic. He directed The People Under the Stairs, but I don't think he directed Flowers in the Attic, even though that movie did eventually come out. Poltergeist 2, The Other Side will come out, with creature design by H.R. Giger. And Laser Blast 2, The Fly with Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis. Ghoulies 2, Star Trek 4. These are already, all thing. Here we go. This is a great one. The team responsible for 1984's science fiction sleeper returns for another explosive outing in The Terminator 2. Arnold Schwarzenegger reprises his role as the movie's ultimate killing machine under James Cameron's lightning-paced command. The director is also completing principal photography on Aliens. Yeah, Aliens would come out in 86, but it would take a few more years for Terminator 2, obviously because of the digital effects. Cameron did The Abyss before Terminator 2 just to get the cephalopod technology that was translated into the liquid metal T-1000. Haunted Honeymoon with Gene Wilder and Gilda Radner. But could it be nearly as incredible as Jerry Lewis in The Nutty Professor 2? What? You imagine Jerry Lewis making The Nutty Professor 2 in 1986? No way. Taipan, starring Brian Brown, that came out. Let's Get Harry, I saw that on the video stores. Director Hal Needham, his latest project is Rad. The tale of a teenager training to be a world-class BMX stunt rider. Yeah, that Rad came out. That's a real movie. Ron Howard follows Cocoon with Gung Ho. Remember Gung Ho? I don't think people even remember that that's one of Ron Howard's movies. Michael Keaton plays the manager at the auto plant. Like, Gung Ho's a pretty good movie, and the Japanese take over and they have to adapt. It's a culture shock, culture clash, let's work together movie. Really sweet, cute movie. Written by Babalu Mandel and Lau Gans, who also writes the upcoming The Money Pit. You ever seen The Money Pit? Tom Hanks and Shelley Long in a house that just keeps taking all their money. It's a cute movie. Great sequence where Tom Hanks is stuck in the floor talking about the Care Bears. But overall, it's one of those movies that I find incredibly hard to watch because it's nothing but a string of really bad things happening to people. And those movies really, I get that they exist. I get that they're entertaining, and I am entertained by them. But I'm also like, it's just one of those things like, can something good happen to somebody? If it's just one bad thing after, like, and it's fine, like in Seven, nothing good happens in Seven. But I'm talking about like Neighbors with Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi, Modern Problems, anything starring Ben Stiller, movies where it's like everything's just uncomfortable and bad. They make me itch. Those movies make me itch, man. So other movies include Date Night with Al Franken and Tom Davis. I don't think that ever came out. I have no idea. Happy New Year with Peter Falk and Charles Durning. Whoops Apocalypse with Peter Cook and Loretta Swit. Back to School. The Whoopie Boys. God, Whoopie Boys was one of those movies. I've never seen The Whoopie Boys, but we couldn't keep that in stock at the video store. Everybody said how great that was. I have no idea. Pirates, directed by Roman Polanski, starring Walter Matthau. Clockwise with John Cleese. I've actually seen Clockwise. Sweet Liberty. After their successful collaborations on 16 Candles and The Breakfast Club, Molly Ringwald and John Hughes reteamed for Pretty in Pink with Andrew McCarthy and James Spader. And under James Spader, it says, from Tough Turf. Isn't that great? That's really funny. Breakfast Club. Not talking about Breakfast Club, but it's not. It carries on the themes, but it's not the same characters. Howard Deutsch makes his feature film directorial with Pretty in Pink after directing videos for Billy Joel, Billy Idol. Ivan Reitman, Legal Eagles with Daryl Hannah, Robert Redford, and Deborah Winger. David Lynch directing Blue Velvet. I mean, it's just one line here, Blue Velvet, with no idea that that would be a movie that people would talk about 30 years later. I mean, Blue Velvet's fantastic. You watch it and you're just enthralled. And again, maybe I'm just contradicting myself because Blue Velvet's about everything bad happening to a guy, right? Wow. 8 Million Ways to Die with Jeff Bridges and Rosanna Arquette. I don't know if that's a movie or not. Running Scared with Billy Crystal is coming up. Yes. Band of the Hand. Remember Band of the Hand? Oh my God. Hannah and Her Sisters. I'm skipping down here. Dan Aykroyd is working on a script for Dragnet. That would come out in 87. Judd Nelson in Blue City. Returning home after 5 years, he discovers his naive memories conflict with the graft and corruption of the quiet Florida community. Blue City sounds familiar. I'd have to look that up. Boy, they really go on about, like, Blue Velvet gets one sentence. Blue City with Judd Nelson gets like a paragraph and a half. That's really funny. Watch for the bizarre twists and surprising turns of FX. Brian Brown. I loved FX with what's that guy? Yeah, Brian Brown. I was gonna say Brian, the other Brian, but it's Brian Brown. He gets hired to fake a murder, and it turns out to be a real murder, and he's on the run. Great. Hoosiers is coming out. Half Moon Street. Yeah. Like, this says turn to page 71 for more. Like, he's got even more piled up back here. The problem is that these pages aren't numbered. I have to skip through Marielle Hemingway, Kathleen Turner, Sybil Danning. They're all like pin-up shots. Daryl Hannah, Clan of the Cave Bear. Anybody see that movie about cavemen? It's so funny how many movies. Oh my gosh! Here's Carolyn Monroe. Here's an intimate look at Carolyn Monroe from Star Crash. Was that the movie she was in with David Hasselhoff? Who is this woman? Wendy O. Oh my gosh! Like, this is just like a who's who of who isn't back in the day. Coming attractions include Jim Belushi, who's hot from Saturday Night Live. Teams forces with James Woods on Salvador. He'll also be in Sexual Perversity in Chicago with Rob Lowe and Demi Moore. That movie actually came out as about last night. Number One with a Bullet. Karate Kid 2. Just Between Friends, starring Mary Tyler Moore and Christine Lottie. And David Bowie and Sade in Absolute Beginner. So that's 1986, folks. I think we're going to wrap it up there. That's 2 out of 10 or so. We've got a lot more to go through. But I just love immersing in movies in production, movies we think are going to happen, movies that are, here's what the movie's about, and it turns out that's not what the movie's about at all. Like, I think that's fascinating. If you didn't find it fascinating, I'm sorry. You're on this journey with me, and I think it's fun to look at this kind of stuff. I've always been a fan of behind the scenes and making of and who's in who with what and how did that person get the job. Oh, because they were in that movie with so-and-so. And my head is filled with this kind of crap. So thanks for tuning in. Thank you to everybody for helping me on GoFundMe. During the show, my good friend David pledged to donate, and I just, again, I'm eternally grateful. I'm happy to have my friends help me out so that I can have a camera where the sun doesn't shine. Yes, that'll be an exciting day, and I will tell you all about that. Coming up in the future, like I said, I'm going to do my election special, which is not about the election at all, but about me not being in the election. We've got some movie shows coming up from Hindle and Michael. I'm sorry it's taken so long. The eternal apology from Jeff about episodes taking so long. But hey, this is real life, folks. This is real life, and this is what happens. Things collide, you know. You go to the doctor and you have to have tests, or I got a new boss at work, and new challenges and new opportunities, and I am creatively, I am at a fantastic place right now with editing book 4, looking ahead to book 5 in my book series. This show, 91 Reasons, would be daily if I had the time. If I could take time and do a daily show, I would do it. It would kill you having to keep up on that many shows. So a lot of people are like, Jeff, thank you that you're one a week right now. Because I know we were more than that for a while, especially with all those loot crates. But yeah, you'll see the family. We're welcoming some guests tomorrow night for a show. The shows are never ending. Welcome to the Halloween season. Have a great Halloween. Don't let people who don't like Halloween take it away from us. We have to fight to keep Halloween. I've said that before. I'll say it again. We have to fight the social justice warriors who want to take Halloween away from us. Everybody's got their gree-gree. Halloween's a big gree-gree for me, man. I don't ever want Halloween to end. I think there's a Don Post mask convention coming up. I have to look into that because I love me some Don Post masks. I certainly do. Thanks for everybody who came out to my birthday. I don't know if I mentioned that in the last episode or not. It was a great time at Fuddruckers. What else is, there's a million things going on and not enough time to do it. Strike that, reverse it. No, it was fine the way it was, Jeff. So I am Jeff Tucker. I have a stack of Prevue magazines. And I remain, you know what? The show is, what is it? Say it to me. Oh, you said it just right. That's great. 91 Reasons.
Thanks for listening to 91 Reasons. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Find us on Facebook. Is anyone even still listening?